This is Raven, 200 pounds, 11 years with one man. The night he died, she refused to leave his side for 6 hours. 3 rescues turned her away. And then, at 2:47 a.m., she did something nobody expected, something that saved a stranger's life. George Calloway was 71 years old. He lived alone in a single-story house on the edge of a small town in rural Virginia, a retired electrician, a widower of 7 years. He had 2 children, one in Colorado, one in Florida. Both called once or twice a year. George never mentioned it to anyone, but Raven knew. Raven always knew. Raven had been George's 60th birthday gift, the one he gave himself. Jet black, broad-chested, deep-wrinkled, 200 pounds of Cane Corso female. Her gaze was heavy, her steps were quiet, and she never left George's side. Every morning while George drank his coffee on the back porch, Raven would sit beside him, press her shoulder against his knee, and fix her eyes on the yard. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. That Thursday morning, George was watering the garden. It was 7:20 a.m. Raven was lying a few feet behind him on the grass, watching him the way she always did. Then the hose dropped, and George dropped. Raven didn't leave his side for 6 hours. It was the neighbor, Margaret, who noticed on her way to the mailbox that afternoon. Raven was sitting at the front gate, not barking, not growling, just sitting there, staring at the door. She'd never seen her look like that. She went inside. She found George. When the paramedics arrived, Raven wouldn't let them through. Not out of aggression, out of an instinct she couldn't name. It took 2 animal control officers and nearly an hour just to move her back to the porch. But she wouldn't leave the property. For 3 days, through wind and rain, she sat at the edge of the gravel driveway and waited, as if some part of her still believed he was coming back. He wasn't. George's daughter Claire flew in from Colorado. She stood on the porch, looked at the enormous animal staring up at her, and shook her head. "I can't take her," she said. "She's too big. My kids are scared of her. Honestly, so am I." The word she meant to say was too much, but the truth was, Raven was heavy, in every sense of the word. The first rescue said no over the phone. Bonded single-owner dog, grieving animals are the hardest cases to place. The second said they were full. The third never called back. Raven lay beside George's empty recliner and didn't eat for 4 days. I see you're still watching, but you haven't subscribed yet. Honestly, that stings a little. Hit that subscribe button. What happens next is the part you'll remember. Ellen Marsh lived 3 houses down from George. She was 38, divorced 5 years earlier, and worked at the town's small public library. She hadn't known George well, just well enough to wave when he walked Raven past her mailbox on Sunday mornings. George would tip his cap and say the same thing every time. "She likes you. That's rare." When Ellen heard about George through Margaret, she didn't know what to do. She knew people brought food when someone died, but there was no one left in that house, just the dog. She made a container of homemade soup anyway. She didn't know why. Maybe her hands just needed something to do. She put it in a paper bag and walked over. When she reached the front porch, Raven saw her. She didn't stand, she didn't bark, she just looked at Ellen. Long, slow, exhausted. The look of something that had been waiting for a long time and was no longer sure what it was waiting for. Ellen set the soup on the step. Then, without any real plan, she opened the door and walked in. Raven followed her inside. The living room was dim. George's recliner faced the window. An empty mug sat on the side table. An old calendar hung crooked on the wall. Raven walked to the recliner and lay beside it. Ellen didn't say anything. She just sat down on the floor, about 6 feet away. She didn't reach for Raven. She didn't speak. She just stayed. 15 minutes passed. Then Raven stood up. She walked slowly across the room. She pressed her nose against Ellen's knee, and she lay back down. Ellen signed the adoption papers the next morning. She told herself she was being foolish. She had a small house, no large yard. She had no idea what she was doing with a 200-pound dog who just lost the only person she had ever loved. But she couldn't stop thinking about that look, the look of something that had belonged completely to someone and then had nothing, and had waited in the rain for 3 days anyway. She took her home. The first week was hard. Raven didn't know how to live in a new place. She flinched at loud sounds. She paced the hallway at night. She wouldn't eat unless Ellen sat on the kitchen floor next to her bowl. So Ellen sat, every evening, on the kitchen floor while Raven ate beside her. Some dogs grieve loudly. They howl, they destroy, they demand. Raven grieved quietly. She carried her loss the way George had carried his loneliness, without making it anyone else's problem. And somehow, that quiet grief recognized something in Ellen's quiet grief, and the two of them began slowly to know each other. These are the kinds of stories that remind us why some bonds choose us, not the other way around. By the third week, Raven pulled an old scarf from Ellen's coat bag and carried it to the bedroom doorway. She set it down carefully, backed away, and watched. Ellen picked it up. Raven's tail moved once, slow, deliberate, like a signature. Ellen never found out if George had taught her that, but the message was clear. You're here now. You're mine now. It was a cold night in February, about 5 months after the adoption, when Ellen woke up at exactly 2:47 in the morning to a sound she had never heard from Raven before. A low, steady growl. Not aggressive, a warning. Raven was standing at the bedroom window. Her body was completely still. Her fur was raised along her spine. Her eyes were locked on something in the backyard. She had positioned herself in front of the bedroom door, all 200 pounds of her, like a wall that had decided it was never going to move. Ellen grabbed her phone and looked through the window. A man was standing at the back fence. He hadn't climbed it yet. He was just watching. His eyes were fixed on Ellen's bedroom window with a patience that turned her stomach cold. Ellen dialed 911. The deputy's headlights swept down the driveway 4 minutes later. The man was already gone. He'd run the moment Raven's silhouette filled the kitchen window. Enormous, black, completely motionless. The deputy told Ellen that 2 other homes on her road had been broken into that month. Hers was the only one the man hadn't entered. She knew exactly why. When the deputy left, Ellen sat down on the kitchen floor, the same way she had sat on George's floor the very first day. Raven came and laid her enormous head on Ellen's shoulder. That 200-pound body, which had guarded a dying man for 6 hours and stared down a stranger in the dark, went completely still and soft. Ellen held her for a long time. Neither of them moved. George had loved Raven for 11 years. He had taught her to be patient, to be steady, to give her whole self to the person who deserved it, and to know somehow who that person was. Raven hadn't lost that. She had just been carrying it with nowhere left to put it, until Ellen walked through the door with a container of soup and sat down on the floor without saying a word. Today, Raven is 12 years old. Ellen still lives in the same small house at the end of the gravel road. Every morning, they walk past George's place together. Raven always slows down in front of the gate. She looks toward the porch for a long moment. Then she keeps walking. Ellen doesn't think she's sad anymore. She thinks she's grateful. She thinks she's saying thank you to the man who taught her how to love someone well enough to do it all over again. Because love, when it's real, doesn't end with the person who first gave it. It waits. Quietly, patiently, until it finds someone willing to receive it. If you're thinking about adopting a senior dog or a single-owner animal, please consider opening your door. They don't need you to fix them. They only need you to stay. Did George somehow lead Raven to Ellen, or did Raven make that choice herself? Is this loyalty, or is it something deeper than instinct? Tell me in the comments.